In our previous episodes in this series, we've seen how the Central Europeans, Mamluks and various Chinese states defended against the Mongol invasions in the time of Chinggis and afterwards. Having given an overview of some of the broad strategies used across the world to defend against the Mongols and their successor states, we now turn to look at a specific example from the lands of Kievan Rus, looking at one of the most successful Rus princes to resist the Mongol conquest and how they navigated the threat the Mongols posed. We're also going to give you some strategy tips for something a little more relaxing, courtesy of our sponsor, Fishing Clash. It's a beautifully rendered mobile game that takes the hassle out of the otherwise chill pastime of fishing. No need to make lengthy preparations or travel to distant locations because you can simulate it all in Fishing Clash, with both solo and multiplayer content, countless locations, tools, and of course, fish. Here are some easy strategies for succeeding in the fishing world. First, focus on upgrading your lures and baits, and remember that they can be used to catch anything at a given fishery in theory, although the chances vary by rarity. So when you need to tip numbers in your favor, use boosters to provide buffs, even increasing the weight of your catches, which increases the speed at which you level up your fishing licenses and unlock more content. Finally, the biggest tip is to join clans, because many goals can be progressed as a team more easily, and you can unlock more activities to take part in, like donations and clan wars. And get ahead easily with our bonus package by getting the game for free via our link in the description or the QR code on screen. You can then enter this gift code in the game to get $20 worth of items, including a unique avatar, 1 mythical lure card, 50 luck power-ups, and 30 weight power-ups. Check it out now. Our story focuses on the princes of Halych and Volhynia, today the western part of Ukraine, and the lives of Danilo Romanovici and his brother Vasilko. They were the sons of Knyaz Roman Mstislavich, who became the powerful prince of the Rus principalities in the late 12th century, becoming Grand Prince of Kiev, renewing an alliance with the Byzantine Empire, and inflicting crushing defeats on the nomadic Kuman people. He even intervened in the war between Hohenstaufen and Welfs in the Holy Roman Empire, and was killed campaigning against the Welfs' Polish allies in 1205. His sons, Danilo and Vasilko, were no more than 4 and 2 years old. Halych-Volhynia fell to independent boyars and rival Knyaz, while Hungary, the Cumans, Poland and the Lithuanians tried to raid or exert control. The city of Halych switched hands constantly, the young Danilo Romanovici fighting almost every year for his birthright. The Hungarian king, Andras II, for instance, installed his son Kalaman there as Prince of Halych. Steadily, the Romanovici brothers brought their family back to influence. Alliances turned quickly. Danilo and Vasilko would ally with the Poles and Hungarians in one year and fight them the next. Plots and rebellions challenged them regularly. Danilo and Vasilko grew up fighting, soon becoming warriors famed for their strength, courage and skill, who took lead roles in combat. Gradually, they reclaimed their family lands throughout Halych and Volhynia, though the city of Halych itself remained under constant threat from Hungarians and rival Knyaz. By the start of the 1220s, the young princes were among the fiercest warriors in all the Rus lands. Danilo Romanovici was among the many princes, boyars and knyaz who attended the Great Council in Kiev, listening to the accounts of terrified Cumans seeking assistance against a frightening enemy from the east. A great host of Rus and Cumans, some of whom had been baptized to seal the coalition, marched into the steppes in the spring of 1223. Danilo was one of the prince's leading parties to observe this new foe, eager to make a name for himself with his courage, and to make a worthwhile comparison to his late father's and ancestor Volodymyr Monomach's victories over nomadic foes. But the Mongols would not be accommodating to the young prince's desires. The Rus princes, their retinues and the Cumans fought as skilled horse archers, with the Rus better equipped. They made a good show of themselves in the first skirmishes, capturing great numbers of Mongol cattle. They captured and executed a Mongol commander who had been scouting out the coalition. The Rus chronicles record the great excitement of the Cumans at getting their revenge on this Mongol leader, whom they called Gemya Bey. In the opinion of historian Stephen Pau, this was the ultimate fate of Jebei Noyan, one of the greatest generals of Chinggis Khan. Jebei's co-commander, Subadei, could not let this go unpunished. The Rus and Cumans pursued the Mongols deeper into the steppes, until reaching the Kalka River, where Subaday's troops turned about and crushed the alliance. The Halych-Volhynian Chronicle records Danilo Romanovici fighting fiercely but suffering a wound to his chest, which, through adrenaline, he did not realize he had incurred until during the bedraggled retreat from the battle. So ended Danilo's first encounter with the Mongols, but it would not be his last. Though regarded as the greatest defeat the Rus princes had ever suffered to that point, it did not stop their continued fighting. The principalities remained a mess of shifting alliances, and the Romanovici grew in strength. The Halych-Volhynian Chronicle reports that from 1227 onwards, Danilo and Vasilko knew no peace. They continued to battle Poles, Hungarians, Lithuanians, rival princes, and Cumans, suffering defeats and enjoying victories. Relations with the Hungarians eased after the death of Andras and his son Bela IV's ascension as Hungarian king. Over the late 1230s, Danilo and Vasilko visited Bela and began negotiating a marriage alliance between their families. Danilo was on one of these trips in 1240 when the Mongols attacked Halych-Volhynia. Like many Rus princes, Danilo seems to have failed to take heed of the fall of the eastern principalities. In late 1239, as the Prince of Kiev, Mikhail Vsevolodovich, fled the city with the approach of the Mongols, Danilo was content to appoint a boyar, Dmitro, to govern it on his behalf, before departing for Hungary. This Dmitro commanded the city when it fell to the Mongols in the winter of 1240. Surprisingly, we are told the Mongols spared Dmitro because of his courage, and that he urged Batu to attack Hungary. Danilo learned of the Mongol attack when he encountered waves of refugees on his way back to Halych. Riding with only a small escort, Danilo fled into Poland, where he found his wife, children, and brother Vasilko had also escaped. Late in 1241, after the Mongols moved into Hungary, Danilo and his family returned to Halych-Volhynia. The sight that awaited them was beyond comprehension. We are told that they could not enter the city of Berestia on account of the stench of the corpses. At the city of Vladimir, not a single person was seen alive, its Church of the Blessed Virgin filled with the fallen. Whatever pain and anger Danilo felt, he did not let it despair him, but turned his wrath instead against the boyars, many of whom refused to listen to him or acted as independent lords. But Danilo's campaign had to be called off, with the return of Batu and Subaday's great host from Hungary. The Mongols dispatched a portion of the army to track down Danilo. He evaded his pursuers, though they wreaked more damage on the country as far as Volodava. Even then, the shadow of the Great Khan was not far away. Despite the common claim, the Mongol army did not retreat to participate in an election in Mongolia. Batu only went as far east as the Volga River, and began dividing up the western steppes to his princes and generals, assigning tax collectors in Rus lands, and putting down a Cuman rebellion in the steppe. One of Danilo's most hated enemies, Prince Mikhail Vsevolodovich, was put to death on Batu's order, for failing to show proper reverence to an icon of Chinggis Khan. While almost all Rus princes and church leaders paid homage in Batu's court on the Volga, Danilo tried to avoid any formal recognition of Batu's authority. Danilo was fortunate too that the destruction in Halych-Volhynia was not total, for he was quickly able to raise an army for a four-pronged assault on eastern Poland in 1243, while in 1244 he fought Rostislav Mikhailovich, a rival prince backed by Bela IV, to take control of Halych city. By this point, Danilo's son Lev was old enough to join his father in battle against the Lithuanians, Poles, and Hungarians. Whatever the terror of the Mongols, Danilo saw the opportunity to consolidate his power, an opportunity his rivals grasped too. Danilo hoped the Mongols would not return, or at least not immediately, to give himself time to strengthen his position and fortify his cities. But in 1245, envoys came from the Mongols demanding his formal submission. Here the Halych-Volhynian Chronicle specifies Danilo's fear, as his fortification project was barely begun. With great trepidation, Danilo travelled to Batu. Tearfully saying goodbye to his family, he spent 25 days with Batu, who greeted Danilo warmly. Batu considered it wise for Danilo to have come of his own volition, though he felt it was late. As Batu gave Danilo fermented mare's milk to drink, he told the Knaz that he was now one of them and should share in their custom. If the lengthy condemnation in the chronicle that follows this encounter is any indication, then Danilo hated his experience with Batu. Despondent, while returning to Halych-Volhynia, he met a Franciscan monk, John de Plano Carpini, who the Pope had sent as an envoy to the Mongols. Carpini had already met with Danilo's brother Vasilko, and now Danilo learned from the Franciscan that the Pope was seeking to organize a crusade against the Mongols, and an offer was made to Danilo that he could join such an alliance if he abandoned the Greek Church for the Roman. While not keen on the religious concession, the promise of military aid stuck in Danilo's mind. By the time Carpini returned from Mongolia and met with Danilo in 1247, he found Danilo excited by the plan, sending letters and envoys back with Carpini to the Pope. Carpini tells us that he learned much about the Mongols from the Romanovici brothers. Some of the anti-Mongol defense measures Carpini made, and we covered previously, likely came directly from Dmitry and Vasilko. Over the next years, Danilo Romanovic exchanged envoys with the Pope, while building up fortifications, securing his lands, and strengthening his army. The thought of armed support from the west against the eastern enemy could allow Danilo to punch above his weight. In the meantime, he used official subordination to Batu to his advantage. Bela IV finally agreed to a marriage agreement between his daughter and Danilo's son Lev, rather than an attack on the vassal of the Khan, which would raise Batu's ire. Danilo also acquainted himself with Mongolian equipment. In 1248, Danilo personally led an army to Bratislava to assist Bela against the Holy Roman Emperor. Here we are told that Danilo, his guards and their horses were adorned in Tartar armor, which was resplendent to behold. By 1253, in Dorohitsin, Danilo formally adopted the Catholic faith while being crowned by the Pope's representatives as King of Ruthenia, Rex Ruthenorum. Unfortunately, no effort was made to provide material support to Danilo. He received a crown and nothing else. Once he realized this, Danilo quickly reneged on the commitment to Catholicism, which resulted in papal letters demanding his return to the fold. Danilo likely did not think highly of these threats. Still, by the mid-1250s, Danilo felt strong enough to take the fight to the enemy. The constant battles with the Lithuanians and other neighbours made his armies experienced and cohesive. A powerful body of heavy cavalry armed with bows and javelins, supported by Cuman light horsemen and sturdy heavy infantry fighting with shield and spear. Fighting began first as skirmishing along border towns, the Mongols and Danilo trying to secure the loyalty of boyars and punishing those who defected. In 1255, perhaps following the death of Batu, King Danilo, his brother Vasilko, and his son Lev campaigned along the Bug River, taking several towns under their rule. But the Mongols struck back the following winter under the command of Keremser. At Vladimir, his advanced troops were repulsed by Vasilko's troops. A pitched battle was avoided though, as Danilo had been gathering his troops at Kelm until the town was destroyed in a devastating fire. The Halych-Volhynian Chronicle blamed a damned peasant woman for the blaze, but the people and troops fled, assuming Kelm had already fallen to the Mongols. While Danilo tried to gather his forces, Keremser tried his luck at Lutsk, an unfortified town where many refugees had gathered. He failed to ford the deep, freezing river, and the townspeople cut down the bridge before Keremser's troops could cross it. His attempt to bombard the foe failed on account of strong winds allegedly throwing the stones back onto the catapults, according to the Halych-Volhynian Chronicle. Keremser withdrew soon after, and was promptly removed from his position. Danilo was fortunate, as Keremser was a poor commander, unable to take advantage of the Knaz's misfortune. The Halych-Volhynian Chronicle reports Danilo was never afraid of him. Keremser's successor was a different story. Boroldai Noyan was an experienced general who had accompanied Batu and Subutai on the Great Campaign. He came with a great army too. The new Joshid Khan, Berke, wanted to tighten the leash on his western frontier. His messengers to Danilo in 1257 came with a simple message. Borodai was going to march against the Lithuanians, and if they were truly at peace, then Danilo would join. After deliberation, it was deemed too dangerous to send Danilo to Borodai, so Vasilko went in his brother's stead. Vasilko fought alongside Borodai in a number of battles against the Lithuanians over 1258. Borodai commended him on his ability. Meanwhile, Danilo navigated away from Borodai, successfully avoiding him. An annoyed but placated Borodai returned to the steppes. A year of rare peace followed. In Vladimir in November 1259, Danilo and his family were celebrating the wedding of Vasilko's daughter when more messages came from Borodai, demanding Danilo and Vasilko in his presence. Vasilko, Danilo's son Lev, and the Bishop of Kelm went to Borodai, whose fury at Danilo's absence left them trembling. He then ordered they demonstrate their loyalty by dismantling their fortifications. Reluctantly, they carried out Borodai's will and tore down many of Halych Volynia's walls and towers. Borodai accompanied Vasilko to Vladimir and watched as Vasilko set fire to the great wooden walls and dug up the entrenchments. Borodai even entered Vladimir, enjoying a dinner in Vasilko's home there. Only at Kelm was Borodai denied. The garrison stood their ground, barring the doors and arming crossbows and catapults against them. Borodai sent Vasilko to receive their surrender. Under the eye of Borodai's officers and interpreters, Vasilko urged the garrison to submit, but as he spoke, he threw rocks at the ground. His men in the city knew how to interpret it and refused the order. Borodai was frustrated but moved on. Perhaps hearing of Danilo's flight to Poland, Borodai took Vasilko and his army into the Polish duchies and unleashed a swath of devastation there, sacking several cities and departing with considerable loot. Danilo avoided this too by fleeing to Hungary. Danilo returned to Halych, having been humbled. He spent his last years quietly, passing from illness in 1264, and Vasilko died a few years later. Danilo's son Lev succeeded the throne as king of Ruthenia. Lev Danilovich did not try to resist the Mongols. Instead, he used them. To deal with raids by the Lithuanians or Poles, Lev regularly requested support from the Khan or Prince Nogai, who would in good order provide an army to protect Lev's border. He learned the lessons of his father and enjoyed a long reign of comparative stability compared to him. The rule of his family continued into the early 14th century. Thanks again to Fishing Clash for sponsoring this video, available with free bonuses via our link below and the gift code on screen. Videos on how the Indians and Koreans defended against the Mongols are on the way, so make sure to subscribe and press the bell button to see them. Recently, we've started releasing weekly Patreon and YouTube member exclusive videos. Join the ranks of patrons and YouTube members via the link in the description or by pressing the button under the video to watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, join our private Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.